So good afternoon to all. This is the last session. I hope you are not too tired, and I hope that you might have a lot of questions after the session. And the panelists, it's a pleasure for me to have them with me today. So what I will do is I will not invite them by name. I will invite them by something that differentiates them from others. So, for example, I have a volunteer that supports social causes in the free time. Who is that person? Not here? Oh, don't be humble. Over there, please come to the podium to sit. And I will not say your name at this moment. You will tell afterwards, please. I also have a person with a degree on environmental chemistry. And I think that many of you will or might be standing up, but I think the person knows who I am referring to, and there she comes. Thank you very much, madam, for being with us today. I have another one which is very similar, which is a degree on chemical engineering. Last name starts with H. Oh, it's not here. Hitton, the last name? Yeah. You're there. Okay, so I made a mistake. Okay. It was chemical engineering, environmental engineering. It's engineering anyway. Okay, so I am missing one person then. Okay. Then I have a lawyer with us. From Norway? Thank you. And I have a Guinness World Book record holder. That's you. Thank you very, very much. Thank you. So you have heard the previous speaker talk about plastics and about circularity. But we are in front of a very big challenge, which is the legacy. We still have a lot to do with what we have already in the environment. But not only in the environment, also in our biota, in the different areas of our body. There are a lot of studies about microplastics being in our blood. Microplastics potentially enter in our brain. What does that mean? We still don't know. But we know that when things appear in a place that they are not supposed to be, we might have consequences. So our panelists today will share different aspects of this waste part, this waste legacy, but also they will be telling some good stories around the situation with plastics. So I was supposed to be giving you some numbers, but I think it's not necessary. For all of you living in India and for those of you following the agenda, you know the numbers. They have more than 10 digits, most of them, and the only ones that have maybe 2 digits are because you are referring to percentages. But if not, it's amazing the numbers that you have. And you also know that India has been a leader in many, many areas. First, practically one of the first countries in the world to ban simple single-use plastics. And then I come here and I see this and I say, okay, something is not really matching. But anyway, it's very important to see that area. So I will start, if you allowed me, with a madam from Norway, and maybe the reflection that I would like to hear from you relates to partnerships, to global best practices, to what Norway is doing to help the world understand the issue. As you also know, Norway has been really pushing for this agenda at the international level, and thanks to the government of Norway, together with India and others in the world, we are now having a process to establish a legally binding instrument, a convention, to tell us a little what can be the targets for plastics, what it is necessary to be achieved. So please, madam, you have the floor.
So thank you so much for inviting me to this important discussion. I believe that saving the oceans from the dual crisis of plastic pollution and climate change is really one of the key aspects of this decade, and the private sector plays an important role. And so I am very happy that Norway, together with India, are taking a number of positive steps together to help protect the ocean. One significant partnership is the India-Norway Marine Pollution Initiative, in which the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change is working together with the embassy. And I am also glad that there is significant traction among countries, as you were alluding to deal with plastic pollution internationally. And I really look forward to continue working closely with Indian colleagues in the Intergovernmental Negotiation Committee to develop a legally binding instrument on plastic pollution. Plastic is a global industry, and the solution to plastic pollution needs to be found both locally and globally. So I'm very happy to be able to share how we in Norway promote more sustainable plastic production and sustainable consumption in collaboration with exactly the private sector. So the Norwegian government has adopted a plastic strategy, and it is an important guiding document for this work. And I'll tell you some of the important best practices of plastic waste management in collaboration with the industry, and hopefully this can inspire. So it started with the Norwegian Ministry of Climate and Environment. They challenged the private sector to propose voluntary measures to reduce single-use plastic items. So they started in that direction. And a working group was established composed of the private sector and organizations of private sectors and NGOs. And they together made a report where they set out voluntary measures to reduce the environmental consequences of single-use plastic products, and they proposed a common agreement on plastic products. So the next step is now that the Ministry of Climate and Environment, they will encourage the private sector to develop a Norwegian plastic pact. And two important aspects in this pact will be reducing the consumption of certain single-use plastic items and to take measures to do effective awareness raising amongst the clients. The government has also encouraged the industry on eco-design for plastic materials. A lot can actually be gained from designing products that reduce resource consumption and can be recycled. One example is that the dairy industry, they have taken away the plastic spouts from the milk cartons in Norway. So that's just one design that helps limit the plastic pollution. And then, of course, we have the return schemes for bottles and beverage containers that has also produced very good results. Actually, 91% of plastic bottles that were put in the market in 2020 were recycled through this return system. Plastic beverage bottles with other beverage containers are subject to extended producer responsibility under the Norwegian waste regulation. The last thing that I want to mention here today to you is that Norway has this fee charge for plastic carry bags on behalf of the Norwegian Retailers Environment Fund. And this solution was suggested by the industry itself. And it involves a scheme where members of the fund, they pay a fee per plastic carry bag. And these funds are then earmarked for environmental measures to reduce plastic waste. So in 2020, this fund distributed 150 million Norwegian kroner to 123 projects with the aim of reducing the environmental problem caused by plastic. And one of these projects is actually here in India, in the Gulf of Mannar. So that's, I think, some great examples of how the government and the industry can collaborate. So thank you so much for listening to me, and I look forward to the discussion.
Thank you so much. It's very, very powerful when initiatives come voluntary, and also they are picked up in governments, but also by the public, right, responding to those measures. So now I will turn to Mr. Heaton, and I would like you to tell us a story using three main concepts. One is the concept of infrastructure, waste management, informal sectors, and if you can also relate that to EPR systems, please.
Can I show a presentation?
Yes, or if you prefer, you can be seated, as you wish.
At the outset, I would like to thank the organizers for inviting us. On behalf of AIPMA, All India Plastic Manufacturers Association, I would like to throw some light on some of the aspects that Madam just told. So first is infrastructure for plastic waste management, and quite interesting, there are several facets to it. So the plastic waste management is becoming a complex under new plastics economy, with focus on decarbonization or lowering of carbon footprint, circularity, and sustainability. All these elements have to be an outcome of effective plastic waste management. Let us look at India's track record of infrastructure for PWM or SWM. Although Solid Waste Management and Plastic Waste Management 2016 empowered local bodies to create necessary infrastructure, the process has been rather slow. The industry government engagement has not happened as expected. Nevertheless, we have success stories like Indore, Ambikapur, Surat, Ahmedabad, and many such stories in smaller places. As you all know, Indore is one of the cleanest city, and there the collaboration, along the value chain, involving all the stakeholders from household to the recyclers, this worked very well. As a matter of fact, Indore has been earning substantial amount of revenues out of this whole program. And other cities are trying to imbibe that into their systems, but it has been slow. Similarly, Ambikapur also is a success story as far as the local civic society and the authorities' engagement goes. Surat, it has begun, it will evolve. Ahmedabad also, it has begun and it will evolve. Let us step back and understand the so-called plastic industry. Who are the players? We have less than 20 raw material manufacturers, mainly public sector units, 50,000 plus producers or converters, bulk of them MSMEs, 10,000 plus recycled, formal, informal, set of newcomers with can-do spirit. What we are seeing that later is the most prominent group seen engaging for PWM. They are seeing potential that is not so obvious to most. The cost of infrastructure that probably is needed for effective PWM amounts to 50,000, 60,000 crore and is beyond the producers community. Producers are mainly MSMEs and they can't come up with this kind of capex for creating infrastructure. Raw material manufacturers have keen interest in recycling only, and they don't want to look left or right, because I think their core competency is to manage raw materials. Hence, for catalyzing investment, we need three main criteria. Framework for positive engagement, I think, which is lacking. Shared vision between ULBs, state pollution control boards, and industry. There is a complete lack of shared vision. And concept like plastic credits for gains beyond compliance can really catalyze this kind of spending in the infrastructure. Having said that, we must not forget role of informal segment working, in particular 70 plus recycling clusters across India. You know, there are small clusters like Malegaon, Jalgaon, Dharavi in Mumbai, Surat, Doraji, you know, there are n number of them. Well-lubricated supply chain involving rag pickers, kabadiwalas, aggregators, and all this across India. For example, Doraji gets material, the waste material as far as from Delhi or as far as from Bangalore in south. And you know, they have optimized. The feed is quite cheap. The transportation is sometimes more expensive. But at the end, they've been able to create value around that waste. And they have a functional infrastructure for segregation and recycling. It is very fine-tuned. And you know, this is the result why we have very high rates of 60% or so. Of course, PET bottles do contribute substantially to this, but even if you subtract PET bottle recycling, still we have a comparatively higher rates compared to the world standard of 9%. For example, Doraji in Gujarat, they are making ropes which are exported world over. And it's a value addition, you know, it's upcycling rather than recycling or downcycling. Jalgaon in Maharashtra makes chatai, which is, you know, exported all over. And if you go to Middle East countries, these are the chatais you will be able to buy only. All have demonstrated resource efficiency. Now, when we are talking about you know, infrastructure for recycling, we must not forget that the question is not just recycling; it's a resource efficiency. We, as an association, have supported the idea of recycling cluster in such regional places where there is a demonstrated functionality. And hope such infrastructure projects will see light of day. Samir also has been instrumental in catalyzing government agencies for doing that. And now, you know, that much for the infrastructure. Coming back to EPR and ground realities. A simple back of the envelope math suggests that the quantum of EPR as proposed throws up new set of challenges. And what are they? Are we aligned to the very objectives to be achieved? You know, EPR sounds very good in theory, but are we really aligned? Do we have adequate infrastructure for achieving it? Do we have technology to achieve it? Are our objectives in sync with circularity, sustainability, and reduction in carbon footprint? Are we trying to solve a problem which is not existence? For there are certain items on the EPR list which are 100% recycled. Then there is a question mark. Why do we need EPR on something that is 100% recycled, retrieved from the environment? Does it make any sense? So these are some of the questions that we need to answer. What could be the role of informal segment of plastic value chain in India towards EPR? And this is very, very, very important. And when you talk about informal segments, rag pickers are the first lot that comes to your mind. And one of the objectives as laid down by Niti Aayog is to provide rag pickers inclusive growth, skilling for most effective segregation, and you know, bring them in the mainstream society. Now, if you see in the urban societies, you know, one of the bottleneck has been, and the most critical bottleneck which has been hampering recycling has been the source segregation. And I think we can start from there. We can scale the household helps and the people who manage house for a source segregation. If we can do that, 20-30% of our job would have been done. So I believe that we as an association have been propagating this, and we've been doing this through children. We have been approaching schools and we have been teaching them what to teach to their mothers or their helps. Another thing is, the new concept is evolving that if you want to have a resource efficiency and effective recycling, you need to have a marker system on the materials from the day it is born or it is in the granular form to end of its life. Then if at every stage there is a marker, then you can identify that. And recently a company in Germany has been working with that, and our association is in active engagement with that association to bring that to India. Is that there is a platform, and that platform will mark the granule, the particular grade, and every juncture of its journey till the end of life. And then when somebody is finding it in a trash or a waste stream, with a simple mobile application, that tracker can segregate that material. And if we are able to, train our informal segment to use this kind of a technology, it would be combination of, the informal worker and technology, and it would yield results which are most desirable. On the other side, you have automated systems, but those automated systems are far too expensive, and probably it will take couple of decades for all of India to get it. So this could be an easier, cheaper, low cost, high technology solution which can enhance the quality of recyclates that you would get out of it. So also, as I said earlier, there are 70 odd clusters, and most of them are informal. Most of the units are not even registered. They need to be mentored to formal segments, and this is the idea we have already planted to the government, and some work is happening. Unfortunately, when these units approach government for registration, they face this dire situation of that if you are in existence for last 20 years, you pay all the dues of 20 years or 25 years with penalty duties and whatnot, and which is beyond their capacity. So they just shy away from even coming forward for registration. And we need to bring them, we need to transit them to compliance. It's been difficult. They have been jugaad kind of technologies, but they have been doing good work. And some of them, for example, Thoraji, they've been adding value. And if we as an industry and partnering with government can bring them in a formal segment, that would be a great task and a right step towards saving the environment. And of course, technology induction. We need to get our institutions to develop technology around these kind of activities, where it would be low cost but would result in a high quality of recyclates. We surely do not want them to phase out, as these are about 12 to 14,000 units across India, and on an average, maybe 10, 20 people associated with its commercial activity, and this is large number of human resources. Currently, they are under question mark, and I think the authorities have been sending notices left, right, and center just to make life miserable for them, which we believe it's not correct. We need to hold them. They have been very productive. They have contributed to GDP, and they've been recycling for n number of years. Now, as far as EPR is concerned, there is a lot of resistance, and that is reflected in the very low number of registration as of date. We've been talking about EPR since 2016. Hardly 3,000 units as of date have registered, and most of them are registered because they have been, pressurized to register. So many of the units, it's quite a complex process. When you're talking about 30, 40,000 units which are MSME, which are run by entrepreneur with 10 lines or 5 lines, he doesn't have a time to do all this kind of registration and all that thing. It's a simple, he can just notify that he is a unit active in this activity, and it should be deemed registered. Why you need to have all kind of information where he cannot get the information? He would have to depend upon his chartered accountant, and he would be guided for last 3 years data. He has to give a data of all his customers. And the irony is that the producers or these 30,000-40,000 units are at the receiving end of the whole gamut of PWM. I think it's about time that government understands that they are a contributor to the whole value chain, and they can be treated at par with everybody else on the value chain. And I share a very simple example of brands being part of the EPR requirement, and this this is a story that happened in reality. Some entrepreneur who asked a raw material supplier that you are a brand, but how come you are not part of EPR? And he is still to get the answer. If you are, few thousand crore rupees brand supplying raw material, and still, in spite of being brand, you are exempt from it, I think this is unfair. Open approach to resolve them with industry consultation would go a long way. So plastic serves, friends. Littering pollutes. Segregate the waste, less plastics, and ban littering. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Mr. Beda, Chairman Environment Committee in All Indian Plastics Manufacturers Association. And yes, you are very right. These things to work really need joint efforts and joint thinking and joint commitments. And informal sector is always a challenge everywhere in the world. It is not only a situation in India or in developing countries, it's also in the developed world that happens. And of course, the concepts always are to bring them into formality as much as possible. We want green jobs, we want best practices, and we want things to be done correctly for their health, for their future, but also for the safety of the planet. So thank you very, very much. And I was very impressed when I read your bio because of the social work as well that you are doing. Thank you so much. So now I will turn to you, Dr. Shoshi. I don't know if that's pronounced correctly. And my first question to you, you can take it here or go to the podium, is related to this T-shirt, the longest T-shirt ever in 2018, coming from plastics, that gave you this prize, or this record. That's the first question. Just maybe you can go with it, and then I'll do the substantive question in there.
So, Ethan, by my senior colleague from the plastic industry, plastics love us, hate us, abuse us, kick us, but we are here to stay till such a time that replacement or composites are found. Someone from IPMA, I'm a part of IPMA too, has coined a very nice line. Plastics do not litter, it's people who do. The mask in the ocean, they did not come by themselves. And the T-shirt what we made was from 100% recycled plastics We from the plastic industry collected 200,000 plastic bottles, then turned it into fibers, then fabric, cloth, and the t-shirt. The t-shirt got the recognition in the Guinness Book of World Records. It's the largest t-shirt made from recycled plastics. 2,500 kgs, that is 2.5 tons, 97 meters long, and 70 meters wide. And the message was that if 6 1-liter bottles are not littered, they can clothe a child. And after the record, that t-shirt was cut into 10,000 small t-shirts and distributed to underprivileged children. So we did something small in a big way. Do not litter. Your littered bottles may clothe a child.
Thank you very much. And now I go to the substantive question, which goes into recycling. Part of what you are explaining with the t-shirt example, the packaging system and the eco-design somehow, right? How we can really design for the environment, for the people.
See, we have learned, 2 days of seminar, and we have come a long way in sustainability. We have seen some pragmatic approaches to sustainability. People committed to sustainability. Before the pandemic, sustainability began when the stomachs were full. But now we have realized that you cannot do sustainability on a full stomach. Our stomachs are now pinched by the environment. Someone had said that environment is everything but me. But times have changed. Nothing can come at the cost of environment. And then we are talking about design for environment. Let me tell you about packaging, then I go to my presentation. I am packaged myself in a jacket which is made from recycled plastics. And the shoes are made from ocean plastics. That's the design for environment. A small living example. Can I have the presentation, please? Chemicals and design for sustainable packaging. Hitenji talked about what is happening. This may sound like a fairy tale story, or the concepts which are now just beginning to happen. Design first begins with the principles of designs, maximizing the resource efficiency, eliminating and minimizing the hazards and pollution of the product, designing system for life cycle thinking. Life cycle analysis, life cycle thinking is a very, very important concept which is now evolving. Then the material choice, materials with low risk and hazard to our environment after their life also being used. Materials that generate low or no waste design concept. Materials using, that is, bio-based feedstock, the stock from nature. When we select the sustainable packaging, materials with less risk hazard, materials with commercial afterlife, and that low waste. And when the manufacturing technique that has less emissions, least processing aids and additives, and non-hazardous chemicals. Chemicals are being banned which create hazards, and minimizing the work exposure or the exposure to the person manufacturing it. So in the use phase, we talk about the intended lifespan of the product, generating minimum emissions, and after the end of use, minimizing the waste, simplifying the design, single versus multi-polymers, multi-layered plastics or metals, plastics, metals. Now companies have come up with multi-layered materials of the same material. So that is the new development, the new normal. Matching polymer to recycling methods. This has to be certainly thought of. And of course, minimizing and mitigating ways that we do not litter. And at the end of it, transparency in all what we do and make the package. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I like the power of your speech and the voice of what you are saying and leading by example in many of the things that are contained in your presentation. Thank you so much for that. Dr. Yoshi, and sorry again for pronouncing it in my Spanish way, Indian Plastics Institute. And now I turn over to you, Madam Nandini, correct? Your name is associated with circular economy, resource efficiency, supply chains, a lot of work, private, government approaches, projects. So and all of you know about the Indian Plastics Pact. There are targets there. There are many things you need to achieve in that. So if I may ask you, what is, in your view, the role of industry towards meeting the targets that are under this pact? Over to you, please.
Thank you so much. I will tell you a little bit about the India Plastics Pact. And as you hear about it, I think you'll be able to yourself understand how it answers the question that you asked. So the India Plastics Pact is similar to plastics pacts which are running and active in 12 other countries of the world. The India Pact is the 13th pact, and it's the first in Asia right now. It is primarily a pact for businesses. It's voluntary, it's a commitment. It applies to stakeholders across the entire plastics value chain, starting from resin manufacturers all the way to end of life. It is applicable to plastic packaging only, so not plastic products at this time. And it is applicable to plastic packaging of any resin. So these are the sort of conditions or the boundaries in which the plastic pacts operate. The plastic pacts all over the world commit to 4 targets. For India, we have kept these targets to be achieved by 2030. And the targets are based on the principles of circulate within the economy, innovate to work up the value stream in that you try to design better plastics, and eliminate where plastics are deemed to be unnecessary or problematic. And the idea is to, through targets 1, 2, 3, and 4, whose ambitions have been arrived at by consultations with Indian companies. So this is entirely contextualized for India. Target 1 speaks of preparing a list of unnecessary or problematic items which can be removed or redesigned through innovative activities by the companies signing on to the pact. Target 2 talks about redesigning the plastics that we do think are absolutely essential so that they become reusable, recyclable, or compostable. Target 3 is for India, it is 50%. Target 2 is 100% of all plastic packaging to be designed for reusability, recyclability, or compostability. Target 3 speaks of or aims at achieving a 50% recycling rate, but an effective recycling rate, which means that it must be effective on scale and in practice. And for this, we need to mobilize the entire collection and sorting system also, recognizing that in India, the informal sector plays a sterling role in this. I don't think we have a more efficient example anywhere. Target 4 speaks of incorporating 25% of what is recycled into plastic packaging. So these are the goals that have been set to 2030, and we have around 35 members and a category of membership called the supporter category. The supporters don't actually sign on to the pact, they don't have to sign on to the commitments, but the brands do. So we have a large number of India's top FMCG companies, but that's by no means the end of the recruitment process, because we very much recognize the importance of having smaller companies on this also. Something that we've done is to work through the governance structure of all the pacts, which involves what are called collaborative action groups. These groups correspond to each of the targets and work on understanding where the problems lie in achieving those targets. The good thing about this is that when we have meetings, we have representatives of the entire plastics value chain sitting at the table. So when you're thinking of redesigning a bit of plastic packaging, you're not looking at it just from the perspective of the brand, but you're seeing what kind of problem it might create for an informal sector worker and how you can incentivize through better design, better collection, and better sorting. So we are working on reports at the moment which address these issues. We also want to bring out and are in the process of writing reports or design guidances, because if we wish to have better designed plastic packaging, it would be good to put out there guidances for maybe rigids, maybe for flexible packaging, and that's what we are working on at present in consultation with the brands, with informal sector organizations, and with converters and with waste management agencies also. So we hope to be having a very comprehensive view of how to redesign plastic packaging and how to, the guidance document for this. We have a guidance document ready on PET bottles already, incorporating facets such as the structure of the label, the coverage of the bottle by the label, the resin of which the cap is made, etc., all of which have an impact on the quality of the recyclate produced. So the idea is, the vision of the pacts is a world where plastic is valued and does not pollute the environment. And that's the kind of plastic you're envisioning will be used and produced in the country. There are several other reports underway. We would like very much to be a neutral body that produces scientific evidence for whatever we do in the future. And we hope to have, through surveys and questionnaires and consultations directly, one-on-one with companies, brands, recyclers, etc., the hope to have a better idea of the numbers now that we are dealing with. And here's where the link with EPR comes in a little bit. The government, having placed the ambition in the form of EPR, has also sort of exposed the fact that we struggle with data. We don't know where we are at present, and I think that's part of the problem that you have outlined over here. We don't know how many recyclers there are, who are doing what. We don't know where they are located. We don't know their capacities. There are so many things we're not aware, and yet there is the target dangling above the brands' heads. So we hope to fill some of that gap through the work we are doing right now, and help at least understand the investment needed in perhaps recycling capacity and the capacity needed to deal with the plastic waste being generated today. The other thing that the Pact would like to focus on quite strongly is the refill and reuse model. So if that is strengthened and propagated more forcefully, you have a better opportunity to remove some part of the packaging which is not necessary, which may not be necessary. I also believe that it's not necessary to have just one solution, and it's unlikely that one solution can address all problems. But it's good to have a slew of solutions, at least, which are, if they are based in scientific thinking and on data, we have a much better chance of achieving success. So we are at the beginning of this journey. We launched in September last year. We're just through 1 year of operations, and there's going to be a lot of very hectic activity in the years ahead. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for explaining what the pact means. And usually when we see that word, it's also very powerful, right? Because it implies people convening, people agreeing, and people making commitments. So it's fantastic, the explanation. Thank you so much. So we still have, I think, around 5 minutes So if it is, no? 5? So if there are any questions from the floor, yes, please.
Thank you very much. My name is Pankaj Uppal, and I'm from Pet Packaging Association for Clean Environment. And we have got the good fortune to be interacting with, I think, all of the participants at some place or at some time or the other. Our interests are fairly common, and we are all part of the plastics industry. And when the moderator was starting the introductions to all the members, I noticed that you mentioned single-use plastics. And you also pointed to the bottles which are lying on the table. Now that is precisely what we want to address in our daily life, and we want to bring the attention to the indigenous data, to the value that India has created in terms of packaging, in terms of PET recycling. And I would also like to draw your attention that the DCPC, that is the Department of Chemicals and Petrochemicals, and the MOEFCC, they had jointly addressed the issue of addressing what is, how to define single-use plastics. And with a lot of deliberations and logics from all the academic community and the scientific community, it was decided that those plastics items will be put into the single-use plastic list, which cause a lot of littering potential, which have a littering potential, and they are difficult to recycle. So here is what my final point is, that PET bottles in India are being recycled at even greater than 90%. And they are being made into valuable products like fiber and various other things. So I just thought that I should respond that this is not an SUP, and it is in India, PET bottles are not a single-use plastic. It's not in the list defined by the MOEFCC. And because of the work that has been done by the Indian industry, just like Hiten Bhai also mentioned, that for the past 20 years, the industry has been working very, very hard to ensure that the PET bottles are recycled and they are made into valuable products. That's my point. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that explanation. And yes, you are very right. My reaction is because usually in other parts of the world, they are not recyclable. They cannot take value from the bottles. So the first thing that we always tend to assume is that it's the same in every country. So
Can I
congratulations
point
again
here? I've just returned from Europe, you know, after a biggest exhibition. And what I was so excited and it was so nice to see that a lot of countries are using bottles made from 100% recycled plastics. That is a very good thing to see and being accepted by the consumers.
No, exactly. And this is, in a way, part of the discussions that will start to happen or continue to happen in my country. And those of you that were here yesterday, I was presented being from Uruguay. And the first negotiating committee to address plastic pollutions will take place in Punta del Este, in Uruguay. So I would really love all of you to have the possibility to go. I know it is not feasible, but in any case, I encourage all of you to follow the negotiations and the discussions. Many things will need to happen, including target setting, including sometimes time frames, including technologies, including solutions, approaches like value chain, circular economy, all of those areas where you have a strength. And today, we didn't only hear this about plastic, we heard a lot about plastics during the whole conclave. So it is very important to reflect what we can really commit to. I don't know if there are any other questions.
We can take one last question from...
Yeah, hello, I'm Reynold. As far as PET recycling is concerned, I am comfortable with downcycling going into textiles. but with due respect to the Coca-Colas of the world, with the super clean process and the challenge testing system, with the informal sector, I'm little uncomfortable with the PET going back to the food packaging segment. I would like to know the panel's view on this.
So there are, standards in place to ensure that, that recycled PET bottle to bottle is up to the mark, it's safe to use. And it has been demonstrated in some places in the world that it can be done in a very large way. So I think it's feasible, and several such machines which make super clean product have been bought by Indian investors, which will be installed in next 1 year. And I think that maybe 20-30% of our bottles will come from that kind of recycled PET. It's premature to say that it cannot be done, or there could be some reservations on that. But it's already in use, done and demonstrated in other parts of the world. So I think it should be okay.
I'll just add to that, that the source of that material is 95% from food grade material. And it took a I've said time is many long time, for the FSSAI to finally approve it. So they have done it after a great thinking. I know as Indians it is difficult for us to digest that concept, but mera desh badal raha hai. That is only what I can say.
Thank you very much. I could extend my appreciation to all of you for the willingness to share your stories and contributing to the whole general discussions. Thank you.
Thank you, Jacqueline, for conducting this session so nicely. And I would ask the last thing, if you can, do the honor of presenting a sustainability kit to our panelists. And I would request Mr. Surya Rao to, present the kit to our moderator, Jacqueline. One more. So I would request Mr. V.V. Surya Rao to give a sustainability kit to Jacqueline. So thank you very much for this very interesting session, and we have last 5 minutes to wrap up this. So I would request to please be seated. I would request Mr. Jaydeep Sathe, who can present in a very crisp manner the way forward for what we have discussed.
Thank you for giving me this opportunity to sum up or try to sum up what's been a very intense 2 days. So congratulations to everyone who's still here after a lot of things to think about, a lot of things we heard, a lot of different areas, subjects, and of course also to survive the fantastic food after perhaps it's hard not to overindulge. So it's good that so many of you are still here. So over the last 2 days, we've taken a whirlwind trip around the world of sustainability and how it relates to the chemical sector. And in fact, how intimately they're related today, from boardroom down to the shop floor and to the community and indeed the world, because the actions that we take, that the sector takes, that every individual company takes today affects the world. India has a goal of reaching a $5 trillion economy in the next few years, and to reach a $20 trillion, to be a $20 trillion economy by 2047, by 100th anniversary of our independence. Now, to do that, the chemical sector is going to play a huge role, as we've heard and discussed over the last 2 days. We saw an overarching vision for integration of ESG and sustainability thinking into the business operations. We saw several examples of how that plays out. For example, the strategic imperative to establish and then implement a realistic decarbonization and net zero plan, the potential and practical technologies that can be evaluated in decarbonization. For example, green hydrogen, we heard about that today. Biofuels, we heard about that today. To use plastics as a source of chemicals, chemical manufacture, carbon capture, operational efficiencies, not to mention the low-hanging fruit of operational efficiencies, and the multiple benefits of doing all of these things. Benefits not just to the business bottom line, but also the positive impact it will have on the social dimensions, on the community, on biodiversity, and on the ecology. The role of digital, everything digital, in enabling and accelerating the sustainable transition or performance in emissions, in efficiencies, in the value chain, in designing innovative products, designing with circularity in mind, all of those things are accelerated by digital, by using digital technology, techniques, and tools. The use of digital in safety, enhancing safety culture, in getting more data, in understanding what the data tells us in real time, and making decisions based on that, making better decisions based on that. All of that we heard about from the experts. So I've talked about product design, to think in terms of a circularity right from the design stage of a product or a raw material for that matter. The enabling, we also heard about the enabling or the potentially obstructive role of regulations, whether it comes to emissions to air or discharge of wastewater. And that's in fact a knotty subject. There's much to be researched and thought about, and then and actions planned accordingly on that subject. Similarly, for product safety, for what's called product stewardship. Again, circularity plays a huge role. The understanding the effects, the toxic effects of chemicals as they move around the world in various supply chains, and then eventually get released to the environment, or indeed they're part of all life on Earth, as we heard. At the CEO Roundtable last night, we had discussions on the regulatory issues related to effluent management, the challenges, and one of the action items was to come up with a way forward to propose to the regulators a science-based, data-backed, evidence-based approach to better manage or more sustainably manage the effluents that industries necessarily produce today. There were also discussions on trade and financial policy, trade, non-trade, and financial policies and challenges related to taking advantage of the movement of companies or industries of the chemical industry outside China as a result of the challenges China has been facing over the last 2 or 3 years. What also was highlighted was the collaboration between industries, between the chemical industry, but also between sectors, because there's so many players, and there's so many variables, so many players that need to come together to work collaboratively and cooperatively to find solutions which are sort of sticky problems. No one company, no one industry can solve them. It necessarily requires cross-sector collaboration and a sort of systems thinking approach with actions that can be implemented locally. which I already touched upon this, but I think we talked about it again over various side conversations as well. There was a session within a lot of ideas presented over here in this hall, but also outside in the corridors. There were a lot of conversations as they relate to practical things that companies can do or are doing to move along the sustainability journey. We've seen the role of data, aside from digital, the role of data that companies internally have today. It may be siloed between functions, between assets, or data that's within a sector or within a country or indeed the world. So we see that the value of data is tremendous. To be able to evaluate it, analyze it, and then come up with actionable items to hasten the sustainability transition of the sector. That's imperative. We've also heard just now in the last session the perspectives of the plastic manufacturers as well as organizations that are trying to bring stakeholders together on reducing the impact of plastics on our environment, on upcycling, on reuse, and reducing overall the impact of plastics in the environment. So again, not an easy problem to solve because we're also dependent on plastics, but certainly one that requires urgent attention. So I hope that the event has allowed all of you to learn from what was presented and also share your experiences inside and outside over here in this room. As I said, we saw a lot of engagement outside the hallways, and there's a lot of potential for partnerships, collaboration between corporates, NGOs, think tanks, the regulators, and other stakeholders. I'll leave you all with a cartoon that was presented yesterday by the first speaker. I think that very aptly encapsulates and very powerfully encapsulates what we're up against. So for those who weren't here yesterday, this is the text below says, yes, the planet got destroyed, but for a beautiful moment in time, we created a lot of value for shareholders. So I think this is really the scale of the problem is very funnily but very seriously captures the scale of the problem that we all face as a planet. And there's so many global treaties and partnerships and so on, but all action is local. So in terms of a call for action, I would say it would be great if the companies that presented today over here, or in fact those that couldn't make it at next year's event, if they could present on concrete actions, large and small, that they've taken in the last 1 year. That means from 2022 to 2023, in making their businesses more sustainable across the value chain. Thank you.
Thank you, Jaideep. Thank you very much, and putting it in a very, very precise and actionable format that, what are expected from our next conference in 2023. So now, to do the last honor of, vote of thanks, I would request Dr. Mrityunjay Chaube from UPL to propose the vote of thanks.
So I am the last to just conclude vote of thanks. So all of the first, I want to thanks to all participants and participants from the many companies. They have come here, and this is a great moment. This is 4th Sustainability Conclave, and I think offline this is second one. First we hold in 2019. I was present in that conclave, and 2 offline, and this is 2 online, and now this is second is offline. So thank you for participations. Also, we thank nearly 50 speakers in this conclave, and a special thanks to them because we discuss on the sustainability. And what I found in this last 2 days, that there is a takeaway on the sustainability from our all speakers. And the takeaway is this, that one thing is sustainability is for the profitability of business. And that is very clear with all these talks. Also, sustainability, which is nothing but ESG. So, E stands for environment. So, there what we found during this discussion, that E part from the ESG, environment, ensure the eco-efficient operation, pollution-free environment. S ensure social acceptability among the community. And G ensure better governance of the company. So I think this is takeaway from our all speakers. Also, our special thanks to the member company who have partners in organizing this conference. And a special thanks to Evonik, JFL, Hygiens, DMCC, Excel Industry, GPC, TFS, Glaxy Surfactants, Godrej, Hykel, HMEL, Sabic, UPL, Aarti Industry, Goodrich, Canoria Chemicals, SRF, Jubilant, Ingravia, and Biswat Chemicals. So I think if someone to maybe left, so excuse me. Okay, thanks also to the our partner ERM, and also our media partner Bleach Chemical, Bleach and the Chemical News. And a special thanks to the UNEP team who have collaborated for this important event. Also, I thank to Rishi Raj Media for all the arrangement for this conference. So I think now we will conclude this session. Thank you to everyone for attending this. Thank you.